Hello, friends. I think we're good to go. I think everything is set up accordingly. We should be relatively on track today. Yeah. So, without further ado, it's Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everyone. I love Earth Day. Earth Day is like the one day of the year where people actually pay attention to the exact kind of science that I do, which happens to be ecology. And for anyone who doesn't know what ecology is, it's basically, I like describing it as when you take biology and environmental science and you smack them together really hard, and then you get ecology. But basically, today we are going to be celebrating Earth Day, and I am super hyped because Earth Day is, again, one of my favorite, holidays. This is actually the first Earth Day in about 4 years where I'm not presenting at an academic conference. So I'm super hyped. And to celebrate, if you're in my Discord, you probably know that I pinged you a while ago asking what your favorite marine animal was. And for those of you who responded, your animal is in here. And we've got 100 animals to go through. Hello, all of you. It has been a while, Downer. Welcome back. How's it going? Yeah, but it's Earth Day. And okay, let's do a proper intro for YouTube. And then we'll continue onwards. So let's do a proper intro and then we'll talk some more. Okay. Hi friends, and welcome to the very first tier list. Today is Earth Day, and we're celebrating by doing a tier list of 100 marine animals. These are all animals that I pinged my Discord for to ask what their favorite marine animal was, and then just some that I really like. Most of this tier list is going to be based on vibes alone, with a few, we're going to be talking about all of them because I'm a huge nerd, but I am so excited. I love Earth Day, and let's celebrate today. Yeah, so I didn't include axolotls, but they are S tier plus. You are absolutely correct. Axolotls are really weird in the fact that, you know those frills on the top of their head? Those are gills, and that's whack. I love salamanders of all kinds. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I specialize in echinoderms, which are sea stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, sand dollars, all that fun stuff, where it's just we're just here for the vibes. We're the raccoon. I don't think I put a raccoon in here, because we're trying to stick to solely marine animals, but I appreciate the vibes. Although Curtis, there is a tilapia in here just for the memes. So, yes. This is going to be a weird combination of me just being super excited about marine biology. It's what I do, and it's what I love. So, be prepared for me to just spill facts at you. Did I put a blobfish? Yes, I did. Unsub, no raccoon. Valid. Yeah, so there is kind of a disproportionate amount of echinoderms because, again, that's my specialty. Those are the guys I work with. I love them. They're really cute. Yeah, it's just, we're here to celebrate. These are all of the animals we're going to be talking about today. And you better be prepared because there are so many. Let's start off. These are in no particular order. They're just kind of in the order that I thought of them. And that's about it. So we're just gonna get started and move on from here. So I'm littering actively hating on the earth. Yeah, that's a good way to get yourself unmodded, Curtis. Cough cough. Okay, so we're gonna start off again. There is kind of a disproportionate amount of echinoderms because they are my animals. I love echinoderms. It's okay, so echinoderms, again, these are where the sea urchins, sea stars, sea cucumbers, brittle stars, crinoids. Those are actually the 5 kinds of echinoderms. That's all of them. But again, I specialize in sea stars. Sea stars are my absolute favorite thing. So we're going to talk a lot about them. So the first 2 we have are actually 2 of my absolute favorite species of sea stars. This one, I put, because the ones I thought of first were my 2 favorite animals. So, those are both going to be S tier, spoiler alert. This is Pycnopodia helianthoides, or the sunflower star. It is the actual species that I do my research on, it is my absolute favorite species of star. Mostly because so are you guys familiar with the kelp forest trophic cascade system? That might sound like a lot, but basically the kelp forest trophic cascade is when when colonial people came out to western US/Canada, they hunted all of the sea otters, and they're like, haha, we get pelts. And then they realized that all of the kelp forests started dying. And that's because sea otters are a major predator towards purple sea urchins, both of whom are actually in this tier list, and we'll talk about those more later. But what that does is it eliminates that entire ecosystem, basically from the top down. So that's called a trophic cascade, because we have different trophic levels, which are like, so you have your primary trophic level, which is where the grass is and all of those plant things are. Wait, did you change career paths? No, I'm still a marine ecologist. That's what I've always been. I like the ocean. Yeah. Hey, Canada, not cringe. All the Canadian people get to fight each other now. Yeah, but so I think you mean A. You're not wrong. Anyways, so that's called a trophic cascade because we've got like trophic levels. So you've got your primary consumers, your secondary consumers, yada yada. It keeps going up. But when something either at the top or the bottom goes completely away, those are usually considered a keystone species, which is again something we'll talk more about later. But trophic cascades basically mean that the ecosystem itself falls apart. Now, my research focuses on the way that... Oh, come on. I've been talking too long. My computer's falling asleep. That these little guys, the Pycnopodia helianthroides, the sunflower star, operates as a keystone species in kelp forests by controlling urchin populations. So, why the shark on the second row smiling, though? Because I wanted a picture of a happy great white shark. That's why. So, these guys hold a very special place in my heart. They're actually the biggest species of sea star, in the fact that they are usually about 1 meter across, or 3 feet for those of you in freedom units. And they're also the fastest moving species of sea star. Which isn't saying a lot, because sea stars do not move quickly, but they are really, really cool, and I absolutely love them. So, those guys are S tier, hands down. They can probably warm your entire heart. Exactly. And then we've got the Rathbnaster californicus, or the California sun star. So these sunflower stars can rotate in between, very, very low tide to subtidal, which is, subtidal is when, they aren't in the tidal zone, so they just never are out of the water. For the most part, they range, I believe, down to 80 meters is their max depth, but the Rathbnaster californicus, the California sun star, is a deep water star. So I believe those guys have been found at depths up to 180 meters, which is again very deep for any of you in freedom units. One of my absolute favorite fun facts about the Rathbnaster californicus, though, is that it is so sea stars have these little things on their bodies called ossicles. Those are the little white specks you find on stars. It's also what makes sea urchins hard. Also, thank you, I am so sorry. Osaxdoring. Let me know how to pronounce that, please. But they have these ossicles, and they're specialized ossicles, because most sea stars are grazers or foragers. And they just kind of vibe on the bottom of the ocean, doing their own special little thing. But the Rathbnaster californicus actually eats live fish, which is insane. And you might be wondering, well, how does a little sea star eat live fish? Which is a very good question. There's actually a really, really great dissertation on this. But the gist of it is that they have little pom-poms of death. They have little pom-poms of spikes that they use to catch fish while they are swimming by. And that is the coolest thing ever. Kind of weird, kind of special, but also it's just... It just takes it in and sucks out their blood. We'll talk kind of about how different species of sea stars eat later, because again, I am biased towards echinoderms, so we have a lot of them to talk about. But moving right along, we've got an anemone. I believe this is a scarlet anemone. I was just kind of looking for a general anemone little like animal because there's so many of them. They're actually really hard for me to tell apart in terms of like when I go tide pooling. I want to say that's a scarlet anemone, so don't quote me on that. But anemones in general, we're just gonna slap in the B tier, mostly because, you know, they're in the family Cnidarians, which is actually spelled with a C because Latin is weird. And Cnidarians are like jellies, corals, anemones, that kind of stuff. But they're called Cnidarians because they have stinging cells, which are cnidocytes, which is again also spelled with a C because Latin is dumb. But the anemone, for you, because you're a big scary human and you have really thick skin, all of their little arms and tentacles feel sticky, which is great. For you, again, they still feel sticky because you have that really thick skin, but those arms are covered in those stinging cells, those cnidocytes. So when you touch them, for you, they're sticky, but if you're like a little shrimp or something swimming through, yeah, you're gonna get impaled and you're gonna get eaten. The reason that anemones are in the B tier, because although that is metal, is that they're pretty much just stinging wow, the English is, I'm too excited and my brain is struggling to go as fast as I want it to. But the anemone is basically just the spiky cells and then a stomach. Like, that's really what an anemone is. So they're not really that complicated, but they're still really cute. So they're still like, they're not D tier, but they're not like S tier, you know, they're just kind of in the middle. Can I pet the spike boys? Yes, you can actually. With all marine animals, that if you're going to touch them, make sure your hands are well coated in seawater. And even, like, I am really, really allergic to seaweed, in case you didn't know that, and I will wrap my hands in seaweed before touching animals, just to make sure that none of the oils from my hands are transferred over. And keep in mind that it is stressful for marine animals to be pet. They're not used to interacting with humans. Think about it. You're a land animal, they're an ocean animal. Usually you're not supposed to kind of exist together, so it's just kind of like, chill out. But yes, anemones are one of the animals that are safe to touch. Just when they start to curl in on themselves, it's time to leave it alone. You know, it's getting too stressed. You don't want to kill an animal by touching it. So you can, but do it cautiously, is what I'm saying. They will be pet if it's the last thing I do. They're actually, again, they're sticky. So be really careful when you're pulling your hand away too, because you don't want to pull off their tentacles or their arms. It's like, that's pretty obvious, but I'm still gonna say it just because. Yeah. I spent my whole childhood learning about space, but never could remember that much information. I know the concept of the universe, how it works, and how things in it works. So it's really impressive for me that you know so much about things that you were interested in. I mean, I was one of those weirdos who decided I was going to be a marine biologist when I was 3 years old. According to my parents, I was 2.5, but we're going to round up to 3 for the sake of ease. So I have pretty much always decided that I wanted to be a marine biologist. This is nothing new for me. And I went to school for a degree in biology. It's just, this is what I love. And I'm so happy that I get to share this with you and celebrate Earth Day in such a glorious way, where I just rant at you guys for 2 hours about the wonderful things that live in the ocean. If they get oily, they just poison. It is kind of poisonous to them. It's not like toxic in the way that a lot of things are, but it is like, it's harmful to them. So of course we want to be really careful when we touch animals, because we just want to like make sure that they're healthy, because again, you're interacting with them in their home. So it's like if you walk into someone's house and you're just like poke, 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 poke. Generally that's pretty frowned upon, I would assume. So let's not do that. But if you're gonna touch them, do it gently, do it respectfully, all of that fun stuff. Yeah. So Allie was a mermaid in their former life. Exactly. I was some kind of marine critter. There's no denying this. I would like to think that I was like a Greenland shark who just spent my entire life vibing at the bottom of the ocean. That's where I get all of my interest in benthic ecology. So for those of you who aren't super in the know about how marine systems work, marine ecologists are typically divided into like a few major categories. I specialize in coastal ecology, which is what you might guess as like being on the coasts. And specifically, I'm interested in the benthic parts. Oops, sorry, microphone. Benthic parts of marine ecology. So benthic ecology is the bottom of the ocean. Pelagic ecology is like the stuff actually floating around in the ocean. But that's still pretty darn cool. I'm going to leave all my lights on to cancel out Earth Day. That's an adventure. I was a penguin. What you talking about? I'm still gonna go with Greenland shark. That's gonna be my new story. I was a Greenland shark in a past life. First interaction I've ever had if that happened to me. Yeah, so I'm... Second sea star looks like a smiley face. I can see that. I can see that. Again, this one over here is a... Well, again, I'm leaving my computer for too long to just talk at you guys. But this one is a sunflower star, and this one is a California sun star. These guys are actually pretty darn closely related, which you can tell because echinoderms have a synapomorphy, or a commonality between them, that is pentaradial symmetry, or basically five-sided symmetry. So when we want to look at that kind of stuff, we look at the five-sided things. Pycnopodia helianthroides, the sunflower star, can have up to 28 legs, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like one of those things that's a commonality but not a rule, you know? And with a lot of sea stars, obviously, you know that they have 5 rays, so it's just kind of one of those things. The California sun star is also in the, like, sun star family. It's not a true family, like the way we think about phylogeny. But it is one of those things where it's super cool. And they're closely related in the fact that they're the stars that have, like, tons of extra legs. Also, Curtis, I'm telling you, you are responsible for learning French. Commonality but not a rule. Sounds like being straight. You're not wrong. A lot of the animal kingdom is very gay, which a lot of people don't want to admit. Like, being gay is very much normal in the animal kingdom. Anyways, let's move on. Next up, we've got the anglerfish. Now, this might be controversial, but we're putting this in the C tier. Mostly because these guys don't do anything, and a lot of people think that they are bioluminescent in themselves, which they're not. At least according to all of the research that I've read, the bioluminescence that comes in their lure, which is that little glowy bit on the end of the thing that, like, you know, famously appears in Nemo and all that fun stuff, basically is a ton of little single-cell organisms called dinoflagellates. And those guys will bioluminesce when they're disturbed. Like, actually, they're the same things that make glowing tides. Curtis is very upset with my ranking of the anglerfish. So this guy, like, honestly, other than that, they just lure people in and they eat them. Like, sure, it's scary if you're afraid of the deep ocean and all of that fun stuff, but it's just, I personally don't find that interesting. You'll also notice that there aren't a huge number of vertebrates on this list, and that's because I'm an invertebrate specialist. But, you know, we're here for vibes, we're here for fun. This is, again, my opinion. It's not like I'm ranking these scientifically, because all animals fill a very important niche. That's why they exist. So, we're just here to talk about them and why I think they're interesting or not. And so, this next little guy, is a banded brittle star. So, brittle stars are closely related in the same way that they're echinoderms, but they are not sea stars. That's something a lot of people really get confused if you're not in the know about echinoderms. So, the smiley face star looks like he can make you happy. Yeah, so this little guy is a banded brittle star. And we're going to put this guy in B tier. Mostly because brittle stars actually kind of freak me out, which you might find kind of weird considering, like, I'm an echinoderm person and I really like sea stars. The reason I don't like brittle stars is because they walk using their legs. Sea stars do not. They use their tube feet. Not happy. Okay. Solid. Brittles target B tier, but no anglerfish. Again, anglerfish don't do anything of their own, so I can't put them higher than a C tier. Yeah, but the banded brittle stars, these are some, actually, species. I have a full picture of, like, me holding a bucket full of these guys. When I was doing my study abroad in the Bahamas, which was just, like, again, they're echinoderms, so I'm not going to put them below B tier, but they're still, it's just not my favorite, you know, they're not that interesting. They don't do things the same way that other animals do, and I find the walking kind of creepy. So, next up, let's see what this is. Oh, this is a blue ring octopus. These guys are A tier, mostly because they're adorable. Like, what is this here? You're so upset, Curtis, and I'm so sorry. Yeah, but the blue ring octopus is by far and large one of the cutest species of octopus, and it's also, as you probably know, bad for you. Do not pick these up. The amount of tourist pictures I've seen where people are like holding blue octopi on their hands and everything, it's like, you realize that these guys will paralyze you, right? Like, their venom is very potent, and we kind of don't want to do that. At least I don't. I'm pretty adamant about not getting paralyzed by a blue ring octopus. These guys are mostly found, if I'm not mistaken, on the coast of like New Zealand and Australia. Again, don't quote me on this, these guys aren't my specialty. But they're still really cute, and I love them. Other than that, they're just octopi, and octopi are amazing for a number of reasons. We've got a few other species of octopi to talk about different. I mean, okay, so fun fact. Octopi is kind of like a weird mixing of Greek and Latin roots, so when you make a plural of something, you're supposed to use the proper, like, Greek or Latin associated root. Also, Curtis redeemed tea, so cheers, mate. And a general rule of thumb is to not touch colorful creatures. You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct. Yeah, but so blue-ringed octopi and octopi in general are just interesting in the fact that, like, they have distributed intelligence, there's all that fun stuff. We'll talk more about octopi later. I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. Just don't pet the blue-ringed octopus. Anyways, we've got the blue tang. Personally, I think these guys are really pretty, but they're overrated, so we're gonna put them in the C tier, down here. If dangerous, why cute? You'd be surprised, friend. You'd be very surprised. Look at poison dart frogs. Those things are so cute, but also very bad for you in the same way. Poison dart frogs, like, not gonna touch, but they're all very cute. And I love them. But touch seagrass first. Exactly. Touch your seagrass. It's good for you. I'm petting the blue ring octopus. Good luck. Let me know how that goes, friend. Yeah, okay. Anyways, blue tang. So, more commonly known as Dory. Which is also, found in Finding Nemo, everyone's favorite childhood movie. You can actually tell tangs apart based on the way. So you've got their body, which is usually that kind of like oval shape, like most fish, because fish are weird and shaped like circles. And then you've got like the little bit where their tail peters into the fin, right? And so tangs are really cool in the fact that they actually have, sorry, I keep bonking my microphone, little spines on that little bit where the tail tapers into the fin. And that's how you can always tell a tang apart. So if you ever go to the aquarium and you see those little spines near the fin, that's what it is. Just so you know, it's a tang. But yeah, but blue tangs, I actually think they're one of the prettiest species of tangs. Really common ones you see in like aquarium keeping or in like coastal environments or not coastal, tropical, is the yellow tang. There's a ton of different species of tang out there. So it's just really cool. Here you get to learn all about my various marine animal facts. I'm going to chug some more tea because I'm talking a lot. Anyways, so that's the blue tang. Blue whales. I don't know where to put the blue whale. Because on one hand, they're freaking massive, and that's really cool. But on the other hand, they don't really do a lot. So if I use the rationale that the anglerfish doesn't do anything a lot, but that's also based on the fact that the cool thing it does isn't even themselves. We're gonna put them in B tier, just a solid middle ground. Mostly because they're huge. So blue whales are actually so big that you can drive a car through the aorta of their heart. Just think about that. So you know how your heart is about this big-ish, It's about the size of your extended fist. Their heart is so big, you can drive a car through the tubes of their heart. Which is, like, yikes. That's a big boy. Also because these guys are definitely gentle giants. They eat like krill and shrimp and that kind of stuff. So they're just generally here for the vibes. And I love that for them. They're really cute. But also, their main distinguishing feature is that they're big. Which actually, we're going to skip ahead and do this. So, this is a megalodon jaw. I refuse to use an artist like rendering. We're just backing it up here so we can talk about it, don't worry. I refuse to use an artist rendering of a megalodon because they just look like glorified great whites. But we're just slapping this here because the megalodon itself is really, really freaking cool. Massive shark, like everyone likes to talk about massive sharks, right? The megalodon is obviously very much extinct. And the reason we're talking about this now, right after the blue whale, is because we can use the size of the blue whale to prove that the megalodon does not exist. Also, down to redeem tea, here we go. I spilled on myself. Also, mug check. It's the Totoro mug that's as big as my head, and I love it. Anyways, Janos subscribed. Thank you, Janos. I love you. Welcome to Lantern Gang, officially. Thank you, Allie, for this stream. You're so welcome. I'm so happy to do this. I am just here to vibe and talk about marine animals. Anyways, back to the megalodon. So, the megalodon is, obviously one of the biggest, it is the biggest species of shark we've ever had in the oceans. And why I keep saying had is because we know for certain it no longer exists, again, due to the size of the blue whale. So, during the time when megalodon was alive, whales were actually really, really small because they needed to be evasive to avoid getting eaten by the megalodon. And in addition to that, we also know that they were warm water sharks and that there was a great freeze and they probably didn't survive. Plus all their food started dying out, and so when you starve, you die. The megalodon definitely does not exist. I hate to break it to any of you megalodon believers out there. But it's just, no, Megs, not a real thing. Well, they are a real thing, but not in the modern day ocean. So blue whales prove that megalodons don't exist. This is a really simplified version of it, but all in all, the megalodon itself, still really, really cool. The fact that there was a shark that was that huge, an aggressive shark, is just in deep water. We'll see them one day. No megalodons, no maidens, exactly. Also, Burning, I hope we can make your day better. We're here to celebrate Earth Day and have a great time, so we're just here for the vibes. But yeah, megalodon actually cannot exist in deep water, again, because we know it was a relatively tropical and coastal shark. So, actually, let's use this on to talk about something else. One of the proxies that people often use to talk about why the megalodon could exist is this guy, the coelacanth. The coelacanth itself is amazing. So we're going to slap that up in A tier and we'll talk about it. But the reason the coelacanth was predicted to be extinct was because it was only found in the fossil record. And also, I would like to point out the first live one was discovered in something like 1913. So, yikes. And the reason that they are all the way in that realm of, we thought they were extinct, which is, again, what people point to with the megalodon, is because they live in, the deep, deep, dark caves of the Indo-Pacific, which, again, the first live animal was found in, the 1913-ish. I want to say it was 1913, but don't. I think it's pronounced coelacanth. Yeah. Also, fun fact, coelom, so when it's spelled like that, C-O-E-L, is actually Latin or Greek, I can't remember, for hollow, basically. And these guys, so in an annelid or a worm, their inner body cavity is called the coelom. But in these guys specifically, I think it's actually referring to parts of their fin that are hollow, which is also really cool. So just take that as you will. It's still a really, really nifty animal. But anyways, the reason that the coelacanth gets used as a proxy for megalodon could still exist is because people thought it was extinct and it wasn't. But again, the reason people thought it was extinct and it wasn't was because it lives way down deep in the dark caves where no one could get to it. And frankly, we know that a deep water system would not be enough food to sustain a megalodon. Also because, frankly, the reason we knew that the giant squid existed was because it washed up on beaches, dead. Yeah, so far no one has found a live megalodon, so, or a dead megalodon, and we haven't found any fresh megalodon teeth, and as you remember, sharks constantly lose teeth, so yeah, the megalodon, definitely not a real animal. Well, again, a modern animal. It is a real animal, just not one that currently exists. So, megalodon A tier, coelacanth also A tier, because they're freaking cool. Anyways, we're moving on to the bottlenose dolphin. Okay. We're gonna get into the first of the props that I prepared for today. This is the animal that got me into loving the ocean. So, the bottlenose dolphin holds a very special place in my heart. This is Dolphin, because I was a very creative 3-year-old and named my stuffed animal Dolphin, because it's a dolphin. And Dolphin actually came from, I can't remember, some marine conservation park that my parents took me to when I was really, really little. And the story that they tell about that, which I'm going to share with you guys because I think it's cute. This is all hearsay, by the way, because I was so little to remember, like far too little to remember what was going on. But apparently I walked up to the keepers when I was like very, very small and had my little head full of curls because my hair used to be ridiculously curly and be like bleach blonde. And I was like, how do I become a marine biologist when I was like 3? So they gave me the stuffed dolphin, and now, oh, I'm so sorry, my microphone is going everywhere today. But look at her, she's beautiful. I love it. Yeah, so this is our first prop for the day. This is Dolphin. I've had her since I was like at least 4. Yeah. I need to leave for a bit making food. You can go make your food, Curtis. Go eat. Also, we will talk about sharks later. So, the sharks are in the list, as you can see. Yeah, but bottlenose dolphins hold a very special place in my heart, as I think they do for many people. I feel like the bottlenose dolphin is what really starts to get a lot of people interested in the ocean. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, they're so charismatic, and they're so brilliant, and something about them draws us to them. And also, it's just, like, I don't have the words to describe. That's why they're S tier, because something filled with that, like, an animal that I have filled with that much love just has to be S tier. Because also they're freaking cool. And that's where we're gonna leave it. Moving on. Dolphin is just gonna sit over here for now. Don't worry, we've got other things over here that we're gonna talk about more as we move on. Anyways, we've got the bull shark next. And these guys, I'm gonna put in on C tier. Mostly because if you're gonna get attacked by a shark, which again, you're more likely to be killed by a vending machine, so not gonna say that's gonna happen, but you know the vibes. You're actually most likely to be attacked by a bull shark. I went to school in Minnesota, which is in like the northern landlocked US for anyone who is curious. And the thing about bull sharks is that they can actually transition from saltwater to freshwater. So there was a huge thing about like bull sharks transferring, like going up the Mississippi River and swimming up the river and attacking people in the river who were swimming in the river. And they're like, why did I get bit by a shark? And the answer is because bull sharks are weird. So for that reason, they are one of the most aggressive kinds of sharks. And personally, like, there are so many species of sharks that are on my list of like sharks I want to dive with or be around. And bull sharks are not on that list. Let's just put it that way. So those guys we're going to slap down in C tier. I don't know if we're even going to use the D tier, because frankly I love all animals too much to put them in the D tier. Actually, that's not true. I can see some that we'll go for it. Bull gut, so head, hold, no brain. It's kind of like a kappa almost. We don't have sea or ocean in checks, so yeah, anything bigger have a chance of killing. Exactly. You're also more likely to be killed by a cow than you are to be attacked by a shark. That's one of my other favorite statistics. You're also more likely to be attacked by a pig. So farm animals are more dangerous than sharks. And again, there are so many hundreds, if not thousands, I'm not in on the shark scene, species of sharks, and I believe less than 10 have ever been documented to attack humans. So, yeah. it's just like, you're not gonna get attacked by a shark. Just don't. I accidentally messed up opening the bacon package wrong, so I can't seal it properly. I gotta use it sooner it goes bad. Yeah, just freeze it. Freeze it is a good call. Oh, no, you'll have to eat bacon, poor you. You're probably gonna make an F tier just for some animal. You're not wrong, and I don't want to admit that yet, Downer. Okay, so yeah, bull sharks we're gonna keep on the C tier, mostly because I don't want to be in the water with them, but it is really cool that they can transition between like freshwater and saltwater, so we'll keep them there. Then make room, Curtis. Just do it. That's all I can offer you. Just do it. Nike swoop. But just do it as Nike, right? Just this is showing off how much of a nerd I am and how little I know about actual things. Okay. Anyways, the most dangerous animal for me can just be cats and dogs. That's like the only animals that I actually see. I mean, again, you can still be attacked by them. It's just like shark attacks tend to be a little more severe because think about it, like they lose teeth constantly, right? And they're also the only method that they have for investigating something is kind of like toddlers, they just stick it in their mouths. The problem with like the difference between a toddler and a shark is that toddlers tend to not have very many teeth and they tend to not be very sharp. Sharks kind of have the opposite problem where they tend to have a lot of teeth and they tend to be very sharp. So, like, it's just kind of that same thing where they're investigating the world around them. It's just that method happens to be pretty harmful to squishy things like us. It's less harmful to non-squishy things like turtles, but it's still like, yeah, kind of not the best situation for a human to be in, you know. Speaking of things that are not squishy, we've got the chitin. Frankly, I think these guys aren't too interesting, so I'll actually put them in the D tier. This is our first D tier animal. Chitins are basically, so they're mollusks, which are very similar to, well, mollusks are, like snails, actually cephalopods are also mollusks, clams, that kind of stuff. Slugs, they're all mollusks. Chitins are in that family, and the only reason that these guys are cool is basically because they have that armor on top of them, so you can see they're like, it's like a little plate armor, basically, and the squishy part is underneath. There are actually people around the world who eat these guys, and you just kind of shove a knife under, because if they're not very firmly attached, you can just shove a knife under and pry them off. But if you're trying to pull them off with your hands, like, freaking good luck, because they will anchor themselves down to a rock. And they do not want to let go. But frankly, I don't blame them, because if someone was threatening me with a knife, I wouldn't either. But those guys, they just kind of vibe. I don't find anything too special in them, so we'll put them in D tier, not because they're terrible and I hate them, but because they're really nothing special. Clownfish. So clownfish, we'll smack in the middle. They're slightly higher than the blue tang, because although, again, they are one of the most popular fish to find in aquariums, they're actually not that common on most reef systems. And the reason we're putting them in B tier is also because of Nemo, you are absolutely correct, but because they can be hermaphroditic. So Finding Nemo, this is a fun fact for all you out there. See, clownfish are weird in the fact that when, like, so we know canonically that, like, the brood of eggs that Finding Nemo was a part of was eaten by a barracuda, which also is scientifically, but was kind of like scientifically, but still. The fact that the dad, I think, like, what is his name, like Marlin or something like that, would have waited until Nemo reached sexual maturity and then transitioned into being female, and they would have mated together. So there's one female per groupie thing. No. So that's the weird thing about clownfish, is that they can actually transition sex. And then mate with partners of the opposite sex. And they can just go back. So it's kind of like the way that, like, turtles' sex is determined by temperature, I believe. These guys can just do it to make sure that they have an available partner. So Nemo's dad would have waited for Nemo to reach sexual maturity and then mated with him. So Finding Nemo would have never happened, but that's fine. Where that's kind of one of those weird nature things that Disney definitely glossed over, and I don't blame them. So let's just continue on with our lives and not think about that too hard. Anyways, this is the cow-nose ray, and I think they are super cute. If you've ever been to an aquarium where they have those like touch tanks of stingrays and that kind of stuff, chances are you've encountered a cow-nose ray before. They're really, really small. They're actually like this big. Catch me trying to figure out where my camera is and how to deal with that. Yeah, so cow-nose rays, they are stingrays, so they do have barbs. Aquariums will trim them. They do grow back. There we go. English, please. But in general, they're just super cute. And if you've ever touched them, they're kind of like a weird... They're smooth, but also not. Basically, I can't think of how to describe it. They almost feel rubbery. There we go. But in general, I just think the cow-nose ray is one of the cutest species of stingray. Because you kind of get the ones that live on the bottom, which again, benthic versus pelagic. And like the benthic ones are just kind of flat and they kind of wait and they eat crabs and stuff. And then I actually think that the pelagic ones are a lot cuter. They're more interesting in a lot of ways. So that will slap that guy in A tier. Anyways, moving on to the electric eel. These guys actually look a lot different than most people think they do. They kind of just look like worms with extra skin, if I'm not lying. Like an extra like little, you know, like the grandma flab on the bottom of your arm, like when they wave their arms and you get that little flap. Yeah, electric eels just kind of have that, but along their entire body is kind of how I look at it. Which, take that as you will. I'm gonna put these also in A tier because it is, as you were saying, really cool that they can send out an electric shock based on like perceived threat. So that's amazing. It's just, yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about it, but it's just so cool. Those flaps are called bat wings. Good to know. Good to know. I'm just calling things as I see them. But yeah, so the electric eel, as we all know, sends out an electric shock when threatened. It's not as potent as I think a lot of people tend to believe it is. But it's still, the fact that they can do that is ridiculously cool in and of itself. So there's that. Next up, we have the emperor penguin. These are the closest we got to being out of the ocean because I wanted to keep this strictly marine. But emperor penguins do use the ocean to fish for food. Sorry, I keep bonking my desk and you get to listen to it. But the emperor penguin, like these guys are just... I'm going to put them in B tier. Mostly because they are kind of interesting and like, so obviously we know, like, when people think about emperor penguins, they think about like the way that they protect their eggs and they huddle around them and all that fun stuff. And I just find them more interesting for the way that like penguins are so cool in the fact that they have slicked down their feathers and like have oiled their feathers to create basically a wetsuit. It's not technically a wetsuit in the way that like we use wetsuits, because wetsuits on humans work by keeping a thin layer of water next to your body that you heat to your body, like that you heat to your body temperature, and that keeps you insulated from the cold water around you. And these guys kind of just lock out the water entirely. We don't need to listen to it, we choose to. There you go. There you go. Hydration break. Okay. Anyways, yeah, so emperor penguins, like, I feel like they're in kind of that weird territory where everyone knows a little about them, but not a lot of people know very much about them, you know, if that makes sense. But I think, again, the coolest thing about penguins is that, like, waterproof layer. And the fact that they can live in such cold temperatures as birds, when birds are notoriously very dumb. And so I just think it's cool, you know? And thanks to movies, we know that penguins are great singers and dancers. Speaking of which, let's hop ahead to rock hopper penguins. Aren't they the gift-giving penguins? I don't know, honestly, Burning. I cannot answer because I know very little about birds. Birds are well outside. Hydration, drink, I think it's called water, exactly. Rock hopper penguins. These guys are known for their fancy hairstyles, basically. I'm transitioning into this one because of the, like, what is it called? Like, Happy Feet? Is that the penguin dancing movie? I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, this exists. rockhopper penguins do exactly that. They hop on rocks, and they're really cute. They're actually, so emperor penguins are freaking huge. They're like, that was a great face, I'm so sorry. I want to say a meter-ish tall. Don't quote me on this, because again, this is all me. I don't work with birds, but I think they're like a meter-ish tall. Rockhopper penguins are like a foot tall, or a third of a meter. And they're just cute, and they hobble around, and frankly, their hair is amazing. Like, look at those eyebrows. I feel like we know a lot of Instagram influencers who would be really jealous of those eyebrows. And frankly, I am too, so I don't blame them. But anyways, yeah, we'll slap that in A tier and we'll leave it there. Next up, we've got the Garibaldi fish. These guys, frankly, actually, they're the state fish of California, which is not where I live, but it's still cool. But California has a state fish. And the Garibaldi fish is mostly amazing because it's a farmer. So this fish lives in kelp forest systems, which you guys know that I'm partial to. But what it'll do is it'll have this little scrap of rock or everything where it's growing algae. And throughout the day, it'll tend to it, it'll protect it from urchins and other foragers, and it'll basically just encourage that seagrass or kelp or that seaweed to grow and algae, and then it'll eat it during the day, and then it'll hide at night. So it's just these little fish are farmers. They're little farmer fish, and it's just, oh, I love it. It makes my heart so happy. Also because the young ones, so this is an adult Garibaldi, this picture is definitely a mature adult. But the young ones have little blue spots on them that are kind of actually pretty similar to the blue ring octopus, and they're really cute. But they also, I just love the fact that they're farmer fish. And they also, so purple urchins will sometimes come and try and eat their little patches of grass, and they've learned how to pick them up by the spines and just kind of toss them off to the side. It's so cool. That makes me so happy. Oh, and next up we've got the giant Pacific octopus. This is also going to be an S tier. And for this, we've got our second prop of the day. This is Octavian. Octavian is my model, giant Pacific octopus. Octavian is very cute. Oh boy, I'm so sorry. Look at those eyes. I love this. So Octavian is very near and dear to my heart, as are giant Pacific octopi, because they're very charismatic animals, actually. And octopi in general, I feel don't get enough love, mostly because I feel a lot of people think that if you don't have bones, you're somehow less intelligent, which the giant Pacific octopus and all octopi species are a lot smarter than we think they are. So octopi have what's called a distributed intelligence, in which they don't have a central nervous system. So they kind of just vibe, and all of their arms more or less think for themselves, which is really, really freaking cool. I saw this absolutely metal video of a giant Pacific octopus attempting to eat a bald eagle. Just think about that for a hot second. A giant Pacific octopus, one of these guys, eating a bald eagle. Holy crap. That's so cool. And it just, it makes me so happy. Yeah, other than that, I don't have a lot to say about them, other than that they're freaking cool, and I love octopi. That thing I was talking about, I remember what I was talking about when I got distracted earlier. So, usually when you're making plurals in science, you use whatever's common to the Greek or Latin root, right? And octopi is a mixing of Greek and Latin roots, which you shouldn't do. So a lot of people tend to default to octopuses, which is also not correct because that's still not right. So if you want to be really, really technical about the proper terminology for a plural octopus, it is octopode. So that's another fun fact for you. Anyways, let's move on. This is the giant squid. We're gonna put this in B tier. Again, deep sea gigantism is a whole phenomenon. It's really freaking cool. And giant squids are, again, we knew they existed because we found carcasses washed up on shore, or fishermen would catch them. But I think it was in 2012 that scientists caught the first footage of a live giant squid at depth, which, again, think about how recent that is. That's 10 years ago. Like, we had known this creature existed for hundreds of years, and 10 years ago is when we first got the footage of it alive. That's insane. The reason these guys are in B tier is mostly because, like, the only thing that's really cool about them is that they're huge. Their eyes are like the size of a dinner plate, like 8 inches or so across. So, that's cool. Other than that, they don't really do a lot. Although there is a really cool study that just came out showing a species, I want to say it was like a lemon shark, which we'll talk more about later, with scars that would almost certainly come from a giant squid. So that completely redefines like the way we thought that predator engagement went, and like the depth at which giant squids predate or lemon sharks predate, which is also really, really cool. So that's just a fun tidbit. I don't know enough about it to really talk about it, in all honesty, but it makes me so excited. And then, okay, so earlier Downer was asking me about why my shark looks so happy. And that is because the great white shark usually is depicted as one of the biggest predators in the ocean. And like we talked about, shark attacks really aren't that common. You know, we don't think of sharks going around with the intention to bite people. So when I Google image searched for a great white shark to put on this tier list, because I made this myself, all of the images that came up were sharks attacking things or biting or whatnot, or showing aggressive behavior, and I refuse to show that because great whites are sharks just like any other. Again, the fact that they're huge and can be aggressive is something that we have to be like worried about when we go diving with them, but other than that, they're just animals. So we found a picture of a happy great white with a lovely smile to represent today. And obviously, these guys are S tier. Frankly, I don't know anyone who thinks of the ocean and doesn't think of a great white shark. Because they're just so prevalent, both in media, but also just in, like, the way, you know, like, it's a little kid's thing, you know? People will be like, what are you interested in? Someone will say, sharks. Which, frankly, I don't blame them. I'm also interested in sharks. I love sharks. So it's just like, I wanted a happy great white because we don't want to think about them as being evil or anything like that, so great white's definitely S tier. Shark, cool, happy. Exactly. Sharks are just sharks. They're just there to vibe, and again, it's like we're invading their home. They belong there and we don't. So it's just kind of like treat them with respect, and they more than likely will treat you with respect. Oh goodness, I don't know what this picture is. This is a European green crab. This is D tier for a very specific reason. So, Standing Bear subscribed. Thank you so much, friend. Welcome to Lantern Gang. So this is a European green crab. And the European green crab is interesting in the fact, well, it's not really interesting, noteworthy in the fact that it's actually an invasive species of crab. So a lot of people tend to think of marine environments as like pretty stagnant and whatnot, but just like any other ecosystem, we can have invasive species in marine environments. Around here, where I live, that happens to be the European green crab is one of them. So these crabs outcompete other native crabs, and like that's not good. We don't want that because like native crabs, obviously you want the animals that are native to a given ecosystem to remain there. So the European green crab is invasive and will outcompete those crabs, which eliminates biodiversity and it causes other problems like further up, because we were talking about trophic cascades earlier. So it's just kind of like, all around, you know? Don't really want a ton of invasive species. So invasive species, definitely D tier. Of course, there is a system in which they're native, and they're totally fine in that. But for my purposes, they are D tier because around here they are invasive, and we don't like that. Next up is the green sea turtle. These guys are actually my mom's favorite animal. Oh, excuse me. Shockingly, I don't have a prop for this one, but I should. But green turtles, I think they're just one of the most quintessential examples, kind of like the great white, of like, you know, if you ask a little kid to draw, do you have the Turritopsis story or the Immortal jelly on the list? I do not know. I have a few other species of jellies. But I was trying, towards the end, I was definitely trying to include more vertebrates, because I'm, again, an invertebrate specialist. I like things that don't have bones. Oh my goodness, Janos! For the gifted subs! Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Janos, for the huge 2 gifted subs. It is much appreciated. Yeah, but the green sea turtle, let's scroll up to where we can see it again. It's just kind of one of those where it's like, everyone knows about it. I'm trying to think of like how to put this. It's like if you ask a little kid to draw their favorite ocean animals, I need to go. Goodbye. Bye, Downer. Thank you for stopping by. It was nice to see you. It was nice. But oh boy, my train of thought is all over the place, Janos. You're making me too excited today. But the green sea turtle is one of those like absolute units of marine like life that people think about. And the green sea turtle itself is really cool. We know that they eat jellies. For those of you who are interested in jellies. And it's also just like they're so cute. I have so many pictures of me in the water with green turtles, again, because I studied abroad in the Bahamas during marine biology, which is really freaking cool. Highly recommend. And it's just like green turtles. They live in seagrass beds. They eat jellies. And they're just so cool to be in the water with, in all honesty. Like, there's nothing like being like snorkeling and just seeing this turtle glide under you. It feels magical. So those guys are going to stay in S tier. Also in S tier, I was talking about this at the beginning of the stream, and here we are back around. I was a Greenland shark in my past life. That's what we've decided. So, Greenland shark, these guys are so freaking cool. I think the oldest known species of shark, or the oldest individual of shark, was like 350 years old. Think about that for a hot second. 350 years old as a single individual shark. I've only seen a wild turtle once in Greece when I was like 5. I mean, if you aren't in the environment where turtles live, then that's probably gonna happen, but also, it's just like wild turtles, wild animals are always the best encounters because it's so cool to interact with animals where they exist, and you just happen to be. So when I was researching in the Bahamas, I was in an island where there was like a population of I think like 200, so it wasn't like a huge touristy destination or anything. It was actually just a small research station. There was a lot of hermit crabs kind of rolling around the dorms and everything. That was fun. But it also meant that I got to encounter animals that hadn't really encountered humans too actively before. And like, let me just tell you, that is an incredible experience. I have some pictures because one of my friends brought an underwater like dive camera with her. I have some pictures of me with like a pod of wild bottlenose dolphins. And let me tell you that when I say I forgot to breathe, I was underwater for like 5 to 6 minutes, which for most people seems like forever. But I was just so excited to be with those dolphins. And the same is true with turtles. So it's just like being in the water with an actual live wild animal feels, at least for someone like me who actively loves the ocean, I cannot describe a day in which my heart was happier. Janos, you gotta chill, buddy. You gotta chill. Thank you so much for gifting another sub, bud. You gotta chill, man. Yeah, so the Greenland shark. Anyways, back to the animal we're actually talking about. I'm gonna have to start speeding this up. We're not even halfway through. Oh boy. Greenland shark. Yeah, so they can live to be 100 or like 300 plus years old. Like, this shark right here may have seen like a time in which before America was a country. Like, what? My brain, like, again, we discussed that I was a Greenland shark in the past life. Also, yes, please thank Janos for all of those gifted subs. It is a huge thank you for me. But that's probably where my interest in the ocean came from, is because I was just roaming around the bottom of the ocean for forever and decided, like, you know what, we're gonna do something about it in the next life. Yeah, it's just Greenland sharks. I don't really have a lot to say about them because we actually don't know a lot about them because they live so deep down, and obviously, like, interacting with them is a huge disturbance for them. So, just in general, they're so cool, and they're S tier. That's all I'm gonna say about it. Ooh, Ooh, we're on to another one where I have a prop. Are you guys excited? This is my hammerhead shark. So actually my sister gave me this when I was having a really, really bad time in life. So his name is Scrungle. For anyone who is curious, the Scrungle is a hammerhead shark. And hammerhead sharks are really, really amazing. Like, look at that face. How could you not love a face that looks like that? The answer is you have to, because they're cute. I just freaking love hammerhead sharks. Also, they're scared of bubbles. It's something you actually have to be really, like, cautious of when you dive with hammerhead sharks, is that they're scared of bubbles. So you have to have, like, special rebreather equipment and everything. And it's just, I love them. I love them. We're gonna put them in A tier because, again, they have been known to attack humans. Again, with all sharks, it's not an intentional attack. Or at least, sharks don't go out of their way to attack humans, is what we should say. But they're scared of bubbles, and also they look so dorky, and they're so cute. I need to start speeding this up, so we're gonna give less details about animals, unless it's one I really care about from now on. Because we're not even halfway through, and we're an hour into stream. So, next up is the harbor seal. These are my dad's favorite animal. And you guys wonder why I fell in love with the ocean so young. Around here, we actually have so many seals and sea lions that we call them rock sausages, because they just lie on the rocks like sausages. One would never believe. And they're really cute. So these guys are actually a lot smaller than I think people tend to think, like seals and sea lions are. I want to say they're like 6 feet or 2 meters in length. A lot of people tend to think they're either like really huge or really tiny, which is not exactly true. They're just kind of like a weird middle ground. Yeah, but these guys, they're cute. If you wanted to know the difference between a seal and a sea lion, it's most visible in the ears. Seals have like hidden ears that are kind of cusped into their head, versus sea lions have those kind of more floppy ears that you see on the sides. So, in case you're wondering, that's how you tell them apart. Okay, next up, this was Burning's favorite fish. I couldn't find the exact species that I think you were referring to, Burning, if you're still around. But the hatchet fish. Hatchet fish tend to live in deep water, and I think they're funky mostly because they're kind of like head, tail. And that's basically most of their design, and they're just kind of like, what? It's one of those animals that we look at and we're like, how the hell did this happen? And it's just, it exists. I don't know what to tell you, man. Anyways, I don't know where to put this, because the hatchet fish in itself isn't that special, but also it's Burning's favorite, and I don't want to disrespect Burning. We'll put it in C tier, mostly because hatchet fish aren't that interesting to me, but I respect that Burning likes them. Horseshoe crab! S tier. Horseshoe crabs are not actually true crabs. They are arthropods, much in the same way that crabs are. Crabs are decapods, which is a subset of arthropods. But horseshoe crabs are, like, basically prehistoric animals. They're so cool in the fact that they basically haven't changed for, like, 3-ish million years. So that's cool. Also, if you look at their back and you see all these, like, little spiny things, all of those are eyes. Like, they have tons of eye spots. And they're not, like, compound eyes like we think of eyes. They're just, like, photoreceptors, basically. They just kind of detect light. In English, they're called knife tails. Interesting. I'm assuming because their tails can be relatively sharp, but correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, so I just think that horseshoe crabs in general, they were actually hugely threatened for a while because, you know, like, they can be kind of a nuisance on beaches, and people were stomping them out so that they could go to the sand beaches and everything. And it's like, obviously, you don't do that. Animals have a right to be there. Which is also why I take such huge issue with things like shark nets. But horseshoe crabs in general, actually a research lab in China started a system where, like, elementary to middle school kids could care for a horseshoe crab for a while and then release it into the wild on a set, like, maturity date. And, like, their population has started to bounce back, but also just look at them. They're so cute. And honestly, just the way they kind of skitter around, if you look at the bottom of them, I love them. I love them. And I also love the fact that they have 12 eyes, because that seems ridiculous, and also I love it. So, that's cool. Humpback whales! Humpback whales are B tier, mostly because, again, I think they're kind of overrated. I think it's just because the tail is kind of shaped like the blade of a knife. That makes sense. I would buy that. That fits the vibe. Yeah, so humpback whales are just, they're kind of the standard whale. When everyone thinks of a whale, I think you instinctively think of a humpback. They're just here for the vibes, and I love that for them. Japanese spider crab. Yeah, D tier. I hate these guys. It's not anything against them. A, I'm hugely arachnophobic. I hate spiders. B, these guys can also be, I believe, 3 meters across. Like, just think about that for a hot second. That's 9 feet for those of us in freedom units. Like, what? Like, what? Why? Why do we need that? We don't. We don't need that, is the answer. Also, just look at them. They look like an eldritch being that crawled out of the deep, and I don't like it, so, D tier. Moving on. Leatherback sea turtle. Much happier. Yay. Leatherback turtles. These guys are massive. Like, you'll see people standing next to them, and, like, their backs, which, again, keep in mind these guys are obviously pretty darn flat comparative to how they are, like, wide and long, and it'll come, like, up to above, like, a 6-foot-tall man's knee. So just, like, scale that out. I think they weigh, on average, again, don't quote me on this because I'm not a vertebrate specialist, like, between 600 to 800 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. Like, that's a big, big boy. And also because when they hatch as these, like, tiny, tiny little baby turtles. And so turtles hatch in what's called a predator swarming fashion, where basically the theory behind their evolutionary design is that if enough of them hatch, at least some of them will survive. So it's called predator swamping because they're trying to literally swamp out the predator's ability to eat all of the animals, like all of the babies. Which is just what? So that's how turtles hatch, in case you were wondering why they hatch in such, like, large groups, that's why. And that's also why, like, they all come back to the same beach, at least it's theorized, so that's why they come back to the same beach and all do it at roughly the same time of year to ensure that everyone's kids have more or less the best chance of survival. Those nests that hatch too early or too late, yeah, it's not looking up for those kids, that's what we're gonna say about that. Anyways, the leatherback turtle, I think these guys are really, really cool. In general, I just like sea turtles because they're my mom's favorite animal. They hold a special place in my heart. I grew up drawing sea turtles for my mother for, like, Mother's Day and things. Specifically green turtles are her favorite, but, like, the hawksbill turtles or the loggerhead turtles, like, those, they're all just so cool, and they all do their own thing in various parts of the world, and I love that for them. So, in general, leatherhead, or leatherback, wow. Leatherback turtles are A tier. This is a tiger shark. Tiger sharks, we're gonna put them in C tier, mostly because every marine biologist I know refers to them as the ocean's trash can. Because tiger sharks are known to eat literally everything that comes in their path. Like, it's not uncommon to find, like, because again, when animals die, oftentimes they wash up on shore, and then scientists will dissect them to see, like, cause of death and, like, get more scientific info, because that's kind of how we learn things. Yeah, tiger sharks just kind of eat literally everything. So they've been found with, like, tires in their stomach. That's a thing. I didn't know that a shark could swallow a tire, but apparently tiger sharks can. Plastic is, of course, very common. Any kind of ocean pollutant, like, we can find in a tiger shark. Other than that, they're actually just pretty cool sharks. They just kind of vibe. They are one of the ones that you have to be, like, wary of when you're going diving, but still, again, sharks don't attack people intentionally. Like, they don't go out seeking human blood and all that fun stuff, so. We're just gonna put them in C tier, mostly because I don't like the fact that they eat tires. The lion's mane jelly. So this is one of the largest species of jellies in the world. And they, like, you don't want to get tangled in these guys. They're cnidarians, like we talked about with the anemone earlier. These guys, again, we're gonna put them in the middle ground. We're gonna put them in B tier. Mostly because the cool thing about them is that they're huge. And that they have, like, that massive mane of stinging cells. But it's just like, it's a big jelly. That's about it. Jellies themselves are ridiculously simple animals. They have, like, 2 kinds of skin, and that's about it. And then the stinging cells. So, not a lot special going on there. I'm gonna take a quick hydration break. And then we've got the Portuguese manivore. So a lot of people think that this is a jelly. It is not. The Portuguese manivore is a siphonophore. And you might be like, well, what the hell is a siphonophore? Which, valid question. It's basically a kind of colony, more than anything. So it's got, I believe the Portuguese manivore has 4 different types of cells, which are a pneumaticist, oh goodness. It's like one that's floaty, one that's a tube cell, one that's like a connectee cell, and one that's a stingy cell. So I don't remember all of it in detail, but that's basically what it is. Yeah, so Portuguese manowar, like, still, don't get stung by them. That's gonna hurt you. Don't do it. But they're actually not jellies. So for that reason, we're putting them in C tier. Oh dear, I done messed up. Okay, we're good. I didn't mess up too badly. We're putting them in here. It would cost like over 800. Yes, to dye your hair. I don't know what dye you want to use, but it's pretty expensive. No, the reason it's that expensive is because we're gonna start doing channel predictions soon, in which you can like bet points. So I have a feeling it'll grow exponentially, which is why it's up so high. This obviously isn't something in which predictions lend itself to, so it's more for like my speedrun days. But yeah, channel predictions will make people get a lot of points a lot faster, hence the high price. But I've also considered lowering it, but we'll figure that out as soon as we start to get a gauge on like what kind of predictions we do and how much people bet on them kind of stuff. So I'm open to changing the price. That's just where it is right now for the initial onset while I'm trying to figure stuff out. Yeah, but predictions, again, will theoretically make stuff easier as we go. Anyways, yeah, Portuguese manowar, not a true jelly, so we're gonna stick it in C tier. Manta ray. These are another species of gentle giant. They kind of glide along. They eat all of those little algae and those little particles in the ocean. Wow. They're just cool animals. Yeah. Manta shrimp. This is specifically a peacock manta shrimp, which is like the brightly colored one. That's why it's called a peacock. It kind of looks like a clown. I also highly encourage you to watch the True Facts About the Manta Shrimp because it's funny. Although keep in mind that manta shrimp do not actually see more colors. It's just that the cones that they do have detect less colors than ours, so it's actually pretty similar to the way we see. That's a misnomer that people get wrong. These guys are freaking cool because they can either punch or stab, so they come in 2 main varieties, the stabby kind and the punchy kind. And they're just cool because they have the hardest punch in the animal kingdom. And that's coming from a shrimp. So apparently in the team that went to the research station I was at before I was there, some student was working with manta shrimp. And apparently wasn't being careful enough because he reached into their tank. And the manta shrimp that live out there are really tiny. They're like this big. They're actually really, really small. Certain manta shrimp can be much larger, but that specific species. And it punched his thumb and broke it. So, moral of the story, pay respect to the animals, treat them the way that they deserve to be treated. Also because manta shrimp can break your thumb, if not more of your bones, depending on the size. So, yeah, don't piss off the manta shrimp. Moon jellies. These guys are pretty simplistic. Again, the 4 little whoop on the top, are gonads, for anyone who's curious. That's cool. Yeah, other than that, there's not a lot going on. Again, jellies have like 2 kinds of skin, and that's about it. So, yeah. More eel. When the jaws open wide and there's more jaws inside, that's a moray. That's how I remember it. Because they have what's called a pharyngeal jaw, which means that when something like a crab, they'll bite it, and obviously crabs have that really hard shell, they'll try and get away, and then they'll have like this little, I should have done this the other way around, but that's okay. They'll have like this little second set of jaws that comes in and grabs the crab and pulls it further in, and then the top mouth. So it's like kind of like a conveyor belt of like moray eel jaws. And that's really cool. Their punch has the speed of sound or something like that, I think. It is, yeah, it can break the sound barrier. It can create a sonic bubble, which is really cool. So, yeah, moray eels with pharyngeal jaws, that's cool. We love that. Don't feed them with sausage or you might lose a finger. Exactly. Yep. Okay, next up is the nudibranch, or the sea slug. Nudibranch actually means naked lung, because they're just freaking cool. Honestly, these guys I only love for the aesthetic. I don't really much care about them in terms of like their ecology or the way that they like influence the environment and all that fun stuff, but I like the way they look, so we'll put them in B tier. Just because there are actually some really, really, really cool species of nudibranch out there. And they come in like so many really cool colors. Again, one of the research students I was working with they were doing their research project on nudibranchs, and they were working with theirs. And of course, marine biologists, like most biologists who work with wildlife, we tend to name our research subjects. I am very much guilty of this. If you look at my research notes, I name everything. But they decided they were going to name all of their nudibranchs various species of alcohol. So we had a red nudibranch named Fireball. We had a brown one named Jameson. Yeah, it's just, marine biologists are weird people. But, you know, what else are you here for? Anyways, this is a nurse shark. Nurse sharks are really, really freaking cool. Those are actually the first species of shark that I swam with. They're extremely docile. Like, I read a news report of someone getting bit by a nurse shark. Excuse me. And I was like, what the hell did you do? Because frankly, like, you can go underwater and hold these guys, and they will not care. Like, you have to really agitate a nurse shark for it to bite you. Also because their mouths are more or less situated on the bottom. So it's like, this is their head. Their mouth is like back here. So it's like, how did you manage to get bit? Which I just don't understand. So, like, again, this comes back to our treat animals with respect, because they are wild animals, and yeah, they have the right to defend themselves. So, don't piss off the nurse shark, please. I love them. They're really cute, and they're really sweet. And also, you can pet them. Curtis, this is a species of shark you can pet. Ooh, next up is the ochre star. These guys are very, very near and dear to me. I remember how I said I wasn't going to talk as much about every animal, and here we are, an hour and a half later. Yeah. But the ochre star is actually, so we talked earlier in the stream about keystone species theory, and the way that certain, like, animals can control the entire community of the ecosystem around them. This was actually defined on the ochre star by Robert Payne. And the ochre star, so this really matters to me because I'm a sea star specialist, and this species of sea star set up that whole ecological theory for everything else. And it just makes me so happy. These guys are also super common around where I live. I have so many pictures of them. You would not believe. I have this and Evernaster Trishtelli, which I didn't bother putting in this list because it's really similar to the ochre star. It's also, cough cough, once we get to having subs for more months, it's actually my 6-month sub badge is a Pisaster Arcaceus, or the ochre star. So, yeah, I like them. These guys are really, really near and dear to my heart. So, they're high key S tier. Orcas. I refuse to call them killer whales because that's just one of those other things that makes people afraid of animals. They're orcas, they're not killer whales. And they're honestly A tier. They're actually dolphins, in case you didn't know that. All dolphins are whales, but not all whales are dolphins. It's like the square and rectangle thing. So, yeah, they're just cool. Okay, Oliver's gonna lose his mind because I need to take him out. So let's take a brief break here, and we'll be back with more marine animals in a hot second. Oh, that's the wrong screen. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that brief interruption. Oliver is very, very distinct about when he needs to go out, and then he will not stop barking, and it can be kind of annoying. Yeah, and Danish orcas are called, oh goodness, or blubber stealers, because they used to steal whales' valuable blubber. I mean, yeah, in some ways they do, because they are predatory, and they have all those sharp teeth. Like, actually, if you look at an orca's mouth, they have, like, really serrated, I don't think they're actually serrated, but they're still sharp teeth. Just in general, and again, they're actually dolphins. They're still really, really freaking cool, and I love them. So orcas are A tier. They don't quite hit S tier because it's just like they're a big predatory whale. Next up, we've got one that is also very near and dear to my heart. So we've got another prop for this one. Here we go. So this next star is Oriaster reticulatus, or the red cushion star. And already, let's just slap this up in S tier because we all know it's going to go there. Oriaster reticulatus is actually the first species of star that I conducted my own research on. And I have this, which is a preserved skeleton of the red cushion star. Now, again, if you've heard me talk about this before, I do not recommend having one of these, because if we look on the inside, the star was gutted, likely while it was still alive, to create the skeleton. Because sea stars, when they die, naturally, they actually dissolve back into seawater. This was given to me as a gift. I did not purchase this. But also, it's like, the fact that someone gutted this animal alive to produce this. Now I use it as an educational tool, but it breaks my heart knowing that an animal lost their life to be a souvenir. So in general, if you see preserved stars, do not buy them. It's literally taking an animal's life to be on your shelf, which, in the fact that, like, hunting is different in the fact that you're actually using the animal's carcass to either sustain yourself or sustain others. This is purely for decoration, and I cannot condone that. Regardless, I have this, because again, it was a gift to me. But we can use it to look at the really cool features of this star. So the red cushion star is a bit more chunky in design than a lot of other stars. This guy can actually go to be up to 28 centimeters in diameter. No, I think 28 was the biggest I had. I think they can be up to 80 centimeters in diameter, if I'm not mistaken. So they can actually get fairly big. But yeah, it's just like, they're a beautiful animal. These guys live in seagrass beds, and they primarily eat sponges as their preferential food choice. And they actually are individual organisms in the fact that, like, they don't usually live together, but sometimes they will feed in what's called a front, and that will, like, graze over a seagrass bed, and they'll just go ahead and eat all of the epiphyte that builds up on seagrass. So epiphyte is, like, a combination of detritus or dead matter, algae, and, like, microorganisms that build up on seagrasses. So these guys actually help maintain seagrass beds by eating up all of the stuff that would prevent a seagrass from photosynthesizing. So that's a cool fun fact. Again, if you see a preserved sea star, do not buy it, because an animal lost their life for that. I have this, again, because it was a gift, and I use it as an educational tool. But please, just don't buy preserved stars. It is a live animal, and it has to be gutted alive. I'm so sorry, I bumped my mic. It has to be gutted alive to produce this. And we know that sea stars feel pain, so yeah, I just urge you, please be cautious. I would not encourage this. But yeah, well, that's what we'll leave it. I don't want to make this depressing. Anyways. Next up, we have the purple urchin. So earlier in the stream, we were talking about the way that the purple urchin caused kelp forest barrens when it wasn't being eaten by sea otters. So we've got the purple urchin here. It in itself is actually a really cool organism. If you guys haven't seen the way sea urchins eat, I highly recommend looking up a YouTube video about it. Because they eat in kind of this, like, weird munchy, like, where they've got, like, this kind of rotating blade on the inside of their oral side. Yeah, it's just really freaking cool. The urchins themselves, I'm going to put in B tier, mostly because, again, my research is based on the devastation that these guys cause. But all in all, I still like them. They're still echinoderms, so they're still near and dear to my heart. But, I can't put them higher than that because they do literally destroy ecosystems if left unchecked. Anyways, this is a sea hare. These are a kind of sea slug. They're really freaking cute. And they produce a lot of slime, actually. They are very, very slimy to the touch. But they're still cute. And you can find them in Caribbean tide pools. At least this specific species. Sea slugs are everywhere. This specific species is from the Caribbean. Yeah. I don't really have a lot to say about them, other than they're cool. Again, I promised I would move faster, so we're gonna try and move faster. Next up is the sea otter. Obviously, these guys are S tier. The fact that they have a favorite rock that they'll keep in the little pouch on their bellies, that alone makes them S tier. They have a favorite rock, and they hold hands when they sleep. I don't know of anything better than that, so sea otters, obviously S tier. Next up is the Pacific spinner dolphin. We have our next prop. This is Thomas. Thomas was a gift for my 15th birthday, actually, at the Vancouver Aquarium. I am now much older than 15, but Thomas is still very near and dear to my heart. But the Pacific spinner dolphin is one of many species of Pacific dolphins, as you might guess, but this one lives in cold and temperate waters. So, you could find it out there, which is pretty darn cool, honestly. I freaking love dolphins. Again, we talked about with the bottlenose dolphin that dolphins are what got me into loving the ocean. Obviously, my research focus has shifted to being more echinoderm and invertebrate based, but how can you not love this face? This face is one that you must love. So spinner dolphins, they're freaking amazing. Like all dolphins, they do their own thing. Like spinner dolphins, which are not to be confused with striped dolphins, because I keep messing up my words today. Spinner dolphins will jump out of the water and do flips, basically. Not flips, but what's it called when you go sideways? I mean, it's spinning, but you know what I mean. Anyways, yeah, they're just, I love dolphins. They're good. They're good. Oh goodness, did I misidentify one of my sharks? Is this a tiger shark? I might have put one of my other sharks in the wrong tier. Oh, this is a lemon shark. Oops. This is a tiger shark. Oh well. Lemon sharks aren't that special either. Curtis, I don't know if you're present yet. Or again. This one I put in mostly as a joke. Because this is a longfin tilapia. Which if you watch me play Raft, you'll know that the longfin tilapia bothers me quite a bit. Mostly because it is a freshwater fish. And for whatever reason, the Raft devs decided that you should be able to fish it out of the deep ocean in Raft. And that bothers me to no end. The longfin tilapia is a freshwater fish found primarily in the waters of the US, like in the Great Lakes. It does not belong in the open ocean. I'm sorry, Raft devs. I love your game. I cannot forgive that mistake. So, that's D tier. You know what? Downer was right. We're making How do I manage to do this? How do I add a new row? Someone tell me how to make tier lists. Add row below. F. This is F tier. I am messing everything up because nope. We refuse to have a longfin tilapia in this house. I refuse to have a longfin tilapia. We'll make it pink because pink is my least favorite color. Longfin tilapia is not an ocean-based fish. I'm sorry, Raft. I love your game. We're not having that in this house. Next up is the vampire squid. This one is honestly really freaking cool. I love the vampire squid. Mostly because that's such a metal name, honestly. But other than that, it doesn't do a lot. It's just kind of there for the vibes. I promised I was going to go faster, so we're going to speed this up. Whale shark! Whale sharks are amazing. They're high on my list of animals I want to dive with someday. Unfortunately, they live primarily in tropical waters, usually in the Western Pacific. So these are on my list of animals I want to be around, but I haven't yet. So they're just here, and we love them. They're really freaking cute. I want to swim with them so badly. They can be 26 feet long, which is so cool. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to tell you. I just love them. They're S tier. Barnacles! These guys go in D tier. Because, well, barnacles in themselves are pretty cool in the fact that they create these calcareous shells with those little protections and everything, they will cut your hands like you will not believe if you were picking up rocks. Barnacles are so freaking sharp. Like, the amount, I have some scars on my legs and my hands from like doing tidal stuff and falling over because I'm not exactly the most graceful person ever. Yeah, they're freaking sharp. They will hurt you. Barnacles will hurt you. They are bloodthirsty. So, D tier. On the other hand, barracuda are actually ridiculously fun to swim with. So, Finding Nemo kind of gave people the impression that barracudas are, you know, like, predatory, monstrous fish, when in reality, they're actually really smart. There's never been a documented case of a barracuda attacking a human, just so you know. So you're at absolutely no risk in being in the water with a barracuda. Even more so, barracuda, like I said, are ridiculously smart. And one of my advisors used to tell us a story about a barracuda that was in the environment he did his research in. And the barracuda would use my instructor as cover. So basically swimming right under him, because the fish wouldn't see the barracuda, they would just see the human, whom once he was in that environment enough, they didn't view as a threat. But the barracuda could use Pat, was his name, as like a little shelter, basically. And then he would dart out and grab a fish and then just come back. And having been in the water with barracuda myself, it's actually really cool to like, although very nerve-wracking, to like look over and you just see these like teeth next to you and you're like, that's a lot of teeth. But it's just, they're fun to be in the water with. You're at absolutely no risk being in the water with them. They're just cute. The barrel eye fish is next. These guys have a transparent head, and that's pretty much all they got going for them. They're deep water fish, so the way that they work is like, obviously in the deeper water you go, the less light there is. So these guys have a transparent head to let as much light in as they possibly can. Which isn't a lot, but still, you know, when you're that dark down, you either become like the anglerfish and develop some kind of symbiotic relationship with a bioluminescent thingy, or you do this and become transparent. There's also something called a cockeye squid, in which it has two different eyeballs. One of them is trained to look down into the dark, and it's like this normal, like at least relatively normal squid eye. And the other is kind of similar actually to the eyes you find in the barrel eye fish, which is like this kind of green translucent orb that's looking up at the surface to detect more light, which is really, really cool. I didn't put that in here, but I maybe should have. Next up, we've got the leaping blemmy. Leaping blemmies are really weird in the fact that they're actually kind of terrestrial. They mostly live on land. This is a fish that lives on the rocks, and they graze for algae. They just kind of gotta keep themselves moist, which that's a terrible word, and I'm sorry. But the fact that it's a fish that lives on the rocks, that's what? You know? That's so incredibly wild. It's ridiculously cool. Yeah, like I said, we're trying to keep this short and sweet since it's been a while. Next up is the blobfish. I specifically chose an image of what the blobfish looks like when it's down in the deep and not like the generic ones you find on like Tumblr, you know? Because I think it's important to point out that it's kind of like reverse shrinkage. When we pull a deep water fish out of the deep water, they kind of expand. Why not just get legs though? Okay, you're gonna love something we're gonna talk about in just a little bit. Spoiler alert, we will talk about fish that have legs. Which is really cool. Yeah, so I specifically chose an image of the blobfish that was what it looks like underwater. Other than that, I think the blobfish is just kind of I think it gets a lot of hype because of the way it looks when it's out of deep water. But other than that, it's just a completely normal fish. You know, it's just, it's there for the vibes. So we'll put that down there. Bobbit worm goes in D tier. These guys terrify me. So, bobbit worms are worms. Shocking, I know. But they live in, like, the edges of reefs mostly. And what they'll do is they have these two really, really long pinchers, and they'll bury the rest of itself in the sand, like all the way straight down. And they have these two really big pinchers, so that when a fish comes swimming in, it'll snap shut and drag it down into the sand. Oop, I'm sorry, I hit my desk. That's terrifying. That's objectively very scary. And so it'll just be waiting for a fish to bump into its, like, sensory tentacles and everything, antenna, and just drag fish down into the sand, and then it will eat them. And that's scary. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So, D tier. Yeah. Anyways, next up is again something we have a prop for. Because I'm a nerd. We've got this, which is one of the most recognizable home decorations. This is a conch shell, or conch. These guys are actually really tasty. Fun fact. I've eaten a fair number of them. This is actually a shell I picked up myself off the bottom of the ocean. Well, again, I was studying abroad in the Bahamas. They're just cool. You know, the insides are typically like, so this one has been long since bleached and everything because shells smell bad. If you take them out of the ocean and you don't wash them, a lot of people tend to think the ocean smells nice. It does not. The ocean smells really, really bad most of the time. Especially when you get like seaweed on you. Just trust me. I forgot to take my dive gear out of the car the other day. You know, would not recommend. 0 out of 10. But conches or conchs are usually like this kind of mottled brownish green on the top, and then they're vibrant pink on the inside. They're really cool, and again, they're really tasty. Other than that, they're just a big snail. So B tier for the really pretty shell. It is kind of a thing, like, you have to be careful about them, because obviously you don't want to overfish conch, which a lot of people do, because it makes such a great souvenir. This one was long since abandoned from when I found it. Again, I'm going to take another hydration break, 1 second. Yeah, so just make sure that if you're going to take something from the beach, A, if it's like a carcass, make sure it is long since dead. B, especially because it will stink. If it's like freshly dead, it will smell very, very bad. And B, make sure that you're taking something that another animal isn't going to like use. So we don't want to take a ton of periwinkle shells because hermit crabs love those. You know? Well, spider snakes. Cone snails. Cone snails are in D tier for the same kind of reason as bobbit worms. Those guys are highly venomous. Like, very, very bad for you. Do not under any circumstances, do not pass go, do not collect $500, like, no. Do not touch. It is just bad for you, it's bad for them, no, just don't. This is a cookie cutter shark. These guys actually scare me. These guys are one of the few species of sharks that we know will attack humans. Again, no shark goes out of their way to attack humans. It's just kind of one of the ones that we know has attacked a human in the past. But the thing about the cookie cutter shark is obviously that very distinctive cookie cutter bite. It's like almost perfectly circular, and they have these saw-like jaws. And the reason that it scares me is because, again, they've been documented to attack people in shipwrecks specifically, like in sinking ships at night. And just imagining like a cookie cutter piece going out of your body, those guys kind of freak me out. Also, they look really, really freaking weird. So we'll put those in C tier. Crown of Thorns. So as we've talked about, I'm a sea star nerd. Sea stars are my thing. Just look at the S tier right now. I hate to say it, but the Crown of Thorns has to go in the D tier. Because the Crown of Thorns is A, the only species of venomous sea star. So that in itself is, that's just a cool fun fact. But because these guys are coralivores and can be invasive. So coralivores eat coral. And if they're invasive, so think about, like, I'm a restoration ecologist. I like to restore ecosystems. And it's kind of a problem when you have, like, when you're trying to restore a coral reef and you've got all of these little guys eating up all your coral, and they're also venomous. Like, that's a problem. We don't like that. So for that reason, these guys are in D tier. Anyways, ctenophores. Again, these guys are ctenophores spelled with a C in front of it because, again, Latin is dumb. Latin or Greek, I can't remember. Still dumb. They're just really cute. A lot of people call these sea grapes, actually, because they're usually pretty darn tiny. A lot of people also confuse them for jellies. They are not jellies, they're not cnidarians, they are ctenophores. They're entirely different. I mostly just like them because they get that kind of rainbow shimmery effect from all of their cilia along the sides, which is how they move. They have like little ciliated rows on their axes, and they're just cute little sea grapes. I love them. Then we've got a cuttlefish. Cuttlefish are amazing in the fact that they can hypnotize their prey using their chromatophores. So chromatophores are those little like color changing cells that exist in like octopi and squids. And they either, I can't remember exactly, but I know that they have like a pigmentation that they can like squeeze down basically. Or they have, I know that there are some of them that just refract light differently. But all in all, the fact that they can hypnotize their prey, also because cephalopods in general, really freaking cool. I love cephalopods. Yeah, we're gonna put those guys in A tier. Dumbo octopus, this guy is S tier. I gotta scroll up. S tier. Because the Dumbo octopus, it's called so because of the little floppy ears on the side. Frankly, it's mostly just because it's really cute. Like, that's the gist of it. It's an octopus just like any others, so while we talked about distributed intelligence, where each arm kind of thinks for itself, it's still true. It just also has the little floppy ears, and that's fantastic. Like, you do you. This is an elkhorn coral. So some of these I put in here specifically because it's Earth Day, and we need to talk about the less fun parts of the ocean. So coral bleaching is obviously a huge problem. Because coral bleaching is when they, corals will eject, they have symbiotic algae that live inside them, basically, and those algae provide 90% of a coral's food. When a coral starts to get sick, such as due to something like rising ocean temperatures, it will eject those, things thinking that there's something wrong with the algae, and so it, like, kicks them out thinking, like, oh, maybe it's making me sick, basically. But the thing is, the polyps that make a coral alive can't provide enough food to sustain the coral, and therefore the coral dies. That's what causes coral bleaching. Elkhorn coral is especially susceptible to this. And it's just one of those kind of tragic things where I've been to a dive site where, like, 4 years prior, it had these massive, healthy elkhorn coral, because they can be, like, 2 to 3 meters in height. Like, they can be big. And then I would come back in a few years and it would be almost entirely dead. And there is nothing more heartbreaking than that, which is why Earth Day matters, because we need to protect our planet. And for so many people, the ocean is out of sight and out of mind. If you don't live on the coast or if you're not actively interested in the ocean, a lot of people tend to not think about things like the kelp forests. Coral reefs are one of like the most thought about marine ecosystems, but there's so much out there that people just don't pay attention to. And so I'm putting the coral in here as a proxy for me to talk about this, because I really care about it. But all marine life and all life in general is worth protecting, and the elkhorn coral itself is a beautiful animal. Coral is animals, it's not a plant. So we'll put this guy in A tier. Let's skip ahead and also do the same for the staghorn coral, which, as you can see, is closely related but not the same. So it is Earth Day, and we're going to talk about the sad things as well as all of the happy things. Okay, let's move on from the sad things, though, and get back into the happy stuff, but not after I drink some tea. Okay, so we've got... It's crazy how little credit the ocean gets for providing things like most of our oxygen. Yeah, so I was talking about kelp forests because kelp forests are my specific research interest. My graduate thesis is based in the early methods of restoration for kelp forests. And an acre of kelp forest will provide 10 times, actually, the amount of oxygen that the same acre of rainforest will provide. Which is insane. Like, that's so much per quantity, and plus, it's a 3-dimensional natural habitat for thousands of species of animals. So, like, obviously, I've been talking about the sea urchin, I talked about the sunflower star, and I talked about the sea otter, because those are like the 3 animals that determine a lot of my success in restoration. But it's like, a lot of people tend to think of the ocean as just kind of like, oh, it's a tourist destination, when in reality, the ocean is the reason we are alive. In a lot of ways, we would not exist without the ocean. And for so many people, like I keep saying, if you don't think about it, because I went to school in Minnesota, in which farmers, like, Minnesota provides the most nitrogen runoff to the Gulf of Mexico. And in the Gulf of Mexico, there's a major dead zone. It's an ecological dead zone because it is too eutrophic to host life anymore. But the thing is, the farmers in Minnesota didn't realize that the runoff from their farms was causing this runoff, this dead zone. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice because I've been talking so much. I usually don't talk this much. Anyways, so I worked as like part of a research study, actually. This was really cool, to identify the effects of cover crops on reducing that nitrogen runoff. So we got a ton of farmers to plant cover crops in their fields and basically prove that it reduces tons of excess nutrient loss and could potentially help in mitigating that dead zone. So I know that this is sad and everything, but trust me when I say that there are scientists out there who care and are doing their best to find ways to fix it. Myself included. Like, I'm a restoration ecologist. I'm looking for ways to repair ecosystems that have been damaged. So, it's just like one of those things where don't lose hope just because it can be rough, but like, scientists are out there, we care, or we're gonna make it work. Because there's plenty of people who care just as much as I do. So let's not get lost up in the sadness. Let's celebrate the wonderful life that we do have. Speaking of which, we've got the flounder. Frankly, these guys are just kind of funny. Other than that, we're gonna put them in C tier, mostly because they literally just lay in the sand all day, and I love that for them, but also look at that face. Like, that's a dorky looking face, and I love that. Kind of similar as the French angelfish. They're just cute. It's one of those fish that you're probably going to find in any aquarium because they're iconic looking fish, you know? You were asking about why not get legs. So we're moving on to the frogfish. Frogfish are really cool in the fact these guys are typically deep water, but they can be in coastal environments. They have adapted their fins into being legs. So they don't swim anymore. They walk along the ocean bottom. Like, these guys are freaking cool. They're fish still, and they kind of use a similar lure system, at least from what I remember. Some of this is based off of just my memory, and I didn't re-research any of these animals. They use a lure kind of similar to the anglerfish, and then they just kind of walk around and find different places to, like, lay down and lurk and do all that fun stuff. So it's just, like, that's cool, you know? Giant clams. Oftentimes you'll see these guys in ultraviolet light to highlight all their color, but they're also rimmed with eyes, kind of similar to the horseshoe crab up here. They have tons and tons of eyes. But other than that, they don't really do a lot. They're just kind of big crabs, so we'll put them in C tier. However, the glass sponge is going to go in S tier, primarily because this is probably one of the oldest living animals on the planet. It's theorized that certain glass sponges can be more than 10,000 years old. Which, holy crap. We were talking about the Greenland shark being really old with like 350 years. 10,000 years old as a single organism. Granted, sponges are probably, or at least they're theoretically, one of the first multicellular organisms to have ever evolved, because they have, again, 4 kinds of cells, which is a whole cell, a structural cell, a stomach cell, and a skin cell. So, sponges don't really do a lot, but still, just think about that. That's insane. I freaking love the ocean. These guys live in really deep, cold water. That's kind of not surprising. But that's the same with these guys. Goblin sharks freak me the hell out. Mostly because look at that. Kind of like the cookie cutter shark freaks me out, mostly because of the way it attacks people. The goblin shark just freaks me out because look at its face. Yeah, that's not okay. That's just flat out not okay. I don't approve of that in any way, shape, or form. Hagfish are, kind of weird. Kind of weird. They produce a ridiculous amount of slime. That is their primary defense, is they just slime. They looked at the world and said, you know what? If I just make myself slimy, nothing will eat me. And it's been kind of right. So, like, honestly, I don't blame it. But also, working with these guys is hell because they will just fill up your tanks with slime. I'm not kidding. And it's a huge problem. And I don't like them for it. So, C tier. I can't hate them because, like, they're just doing what they were meant to do. But also, why? It makes cleanup such a rough time. Hermit crabs are A tier. Oops, I highlighted my screen instead of dragging it. Hermit crabs, like, frankly, they're just adorable. You know, hermit crabs, we've got, like, there's so many different species of them too. I think a lot of people think hermit crabs are all one species. They're definitely not. And they move shells by, usually what they'll do is it's kind of like a colony type activity where they'll all line up in kind of like a little line, because hermit crabs need to rotate shells as they get bigger, because they need bigger shells to protect their bigger bodies, you know, and you're limited in size when you have such a small shell. And so they'll line up in order from like smallest to biggest, and then everyone will move up until they find like the right shell that's their size, and everyone gets a new home, which is just so cool. Like, I love that. Or different species will also just like kind of wait for another hermit crab that it thinks is a similar size to its own, and they'll like trade homes. So these guys, they win at being kind to each other, which we need more of in this world. Humboldt squids are absolutely D tier. This is another animal that is high on the list of animals I do not want to dive with in any way, shape, or form. Because they have been known to remove the rebreather from scuba divers. They've been known to take off masks. They've also been known to try and drag people down. So, like, high key, don't want to deal with that. Please, no. I said no. Yeah, moving on. Marine iguanas. These guys aren't technically marine, but I had to include them because it's ridiculously cool that they are the only species of iguana to, like, deal with the ocean at all. Or at least in the way we think of as, like, dealing with the ocean. So these guys will actually, like, dive and eat the algae growing on the rocks below them, which is super cool. I love the fact that I think they can be underwater for 20 minutes at a time, and they use their sharp claws to, like, hold onto the rocks while they're dealing with all of that, wave movement and everything. So that's cool, and I love them for them. Next up is leopard sharks. Leopard sharks are S tier. These guys are one of the most common sharks that I encounter in my work, because I live in kelp forests, and frankly, they're just really cute, and they're really sweet. They're also only, like, a meter-ish in length most of the time. They can be slightly bigger or slightly smaller, but they're just really cute. They're really docile. They vibe. They just kind of exist around you, you know? And you exist around them, and that's it. We're just chill. We're just here for the vibes. Next up is lionfish. This is going in D tier, not because of its spine and its venom, but because, again, it is invasive. So, in a lot of tropical environments, these guys are actually native to the Indo-Pacific, but they have been moved over, not intentionally, I don't think, to the Caribbean. And they're actually hugely invasive there and are outcompeting a lot of native reef fish, which, again, outcompeting is a problem for a lot of reasons. So, it's just one of those things where we know that, like, that fish in particular is really bad for an ecosystem, and we don't want it there, so they're in D tier because all invasive species, not good, don't love. Lobster. These guys are just they're kind of middle of the ground, so we'll put them in B tier. Mostly the cool thing about lobsters is that they don't actually die of old age. They usually die of starvation when they get too big, to move. So lobsters, like most crustaceans, will shed, their shell every once in a while, and they'll continue to grow. But lobsters can actually outgrow their ability to molt out of their shell. So basically, they can just die of starvation, but they don't die of old age. So that's a fun fact. Manatees are high-key S tier. Because manatees are, like, freaking amazing. They're also known as sea cows. They live in seagrass beds, usually in the Caribbean. But they're just wiggling around, doing their thing. They smell really, really bad, for anyone who's curious. But also, they just graze around. And they protect our seagrass beds. They're also great in estuaries. It's like, literally, what else could you want? The answer is you couldn't. They're fantastic. I love them. Oh, this one isn't technically a marine animal, but I wanted to talk about it, so I slapped it in here anyways. It is a mermaid's purse, which is actually the egg sac for a dogfish, which is a species of shark. So that was a hugely confusing sentence if you don't know what I'm talking about. But the dogfish and certain kinds of skates or rays will lay these so-called mermaid's purses, and then they will, like, hatch the baby animal out of that. So it's usually called a mermaid's purse, and sometimes they wash up on shore. And again, the theory was that these were belonging to mermaids because people are dumb and like superstition. So yeah, I just thought that was really cool, and I had to share that usually they come from dogfish, but there are a few other species that lay like eggs like that. So pretty darn cool. Pretty darn cool. Next up is the chamber nautilus. Frankly, these guys, I don't know how they still exist, because they have been basically unchanged for like 4.5-ish million years, something like that. And they are very similar to the original cephalopods we find in the Ordovician era, in which most cephalopods actually had shells first. Now the chamber nautilus is the only cephalopod to have a shell. And it also has a very, very simple pinhole eyeball. And it's not even an eyeball, it's just an eye. And all it does is kind of like the horseshoe crab, is just detects light, and that's about it. The reason I think these guys shouldn't exist anymore is because literally they'll swim backwards, right? And their eyes are on the side. And they just bonk into things until they can't bonk into it and they swim around it. That's exactly how they move. Also, they spend their day deep down in the water column, usually kind of next to a like coastal shelf. And then at night they'll come up and feed in the upper water. So that's just cool. Anyways, I don't know how they still exist, so we're putting them in B tier. Other than that, kind of nifty. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. We've got the oarfish. Honestly, I find the oarfish most interesting because it was the probable origin of a lot of sea serpent mythology. Oarfish can be like 14 plus feet long, or like 4 meters in length, and they're silvery in color and they have this kind of like red mane over the top of them, and actually have like 2 little antennae sticking out their front. So this is probably where a lot of the like theories for sea serpents came from, but it's just a really long fish. All in all, they don't really do a lot. It's super rare to find them because they tend to be deep in the water or in the open water, but it's still just a cool animal that exists. Next up, we've got a parrotfish. This is specifically a stoplight parrotfish because of its coloration. Frankly, I just think they're funny because of the color. And they have really big teeth. Some species are actually known to use like rocks as tools to open clamshells, so that's just a fun fact. Next up, we've got the ping pong tree sponge, which, try saying that 10 times fast. Also because marine biologists are fantastic, and I love the fact that we named something a ping pong tree sponge. This lives in super deep water, and it feeds much in the way other sponges do, kind of by filtering. So, I just think that it's really cool to look at. I love the fact that it's called a ping pong tree. Yeah, that's about all. And pufferfish. I love pufferfish. We're mostly putting them in B tier because they can actually harm themselves by puffing up too much, which is why you never want to scare a puffer into puffing. It can be damaging for them. And I just love the fact that they puff up, but other than that, they're just kind of, like, if you look at the skeleton to a pufferfish, those things are freaky. Like, I don't want to look at a pufferfish skeleton. But still, pufferfish are pretty neat, so we'll put them in the middle of the road. Next up is a saltwater crocodile. These guys, I mostly love the babies. The babies are really, really cool. And they're so metal in the fact that, like, so there'll be one alpha male who controls a set territory. And that male will be mostly responsible for, like, maintaining a given a given region, and he will mate with any of the local females. If a male is born into that brood, then he has to leave and go establish his own territory somewhere, like, by the time he's, like, a few months old. Otherwise, the male will eat him. So, or at least attack him. That's a thing. But anyways, I just like the babies are cute, and I like seeing the little crocodile swimming up in the open water, because it's, like, little wiggly tail. Yeah. Seahorses. Seahorses are high-key S tier. Mostly because it's one of the few animals in which the male will carry the babies. The female obviously has the eggs, and the man will fertilize them, but then he takes the babies and carries them till birth, which is so cool. It's just amazing. And they're cute. Seahorses are really, really fragile. Again, if you see, like, dried seahorses, please don't buy them. It's one of those animals, it's like, you're taking an animal's life to be a souvenir. Don't do that. Yeah, but other than that, they're really cute. I love the way they swim. They also have a really close relative called the sea dragon, and those things look amazing. They're so freaking cool. They have, like, little leaves coming off of them. I love them. This is a male sheephead fish. Frankly, I just put these guys in because they're huge. And they have some cool coloration. The females actually look really freaking boring and they're smaller. But they're just kind of here. They just kind of exist. And then we've got a spotted eagle ray. So again, while I was studying abroad in the Bahamas, I did a lot of night diving because a lot of the animals I'm really interested in happen to be active at night, which in itself, makes perfect sense because that's when a lot of predators, like everything is in the ocean is always alive. But I was diving with my dive buddy because you never dive alone. And we had this one flashlight that we were sharing and we were taking turns leading because she was more interested in plants, marine plants, and the way that works, and I'm obviously more interested in invertebrates. And we were just kind of swimming along. There was a ton of lionfish. Lionfish are very active at night, so you gotta be careful of like not stepping on them or any of that fun stuff. And also green sea turtles all around us. And then one of us, I can't remember who, shone a light up, and we just saw this massive spotted eagle ray. It was like at least an 8-foot wing diameter, which huge. And I, of course, was super curious, so I started swimming towards it. And then my dive buddy started shining the light backwards, which was all well and good until we saw how long its tail with the stinger was, that it curved in the water. And then I noped out of there, because it's like, I don't want to get stung, personally. I think that doesn't sound like a good time. But that is my personal close encounter with a spotted eagle ray. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And seeing things at night in the water can be really scary, of course, because you can only see like 4 feet in front of you. But that ray holds that memory is very special to me. Next up, we have a stellar sea lion. So we talked about the way that you can tell a seal and a sea lion apart. What's Nightmare Raft, by the way? Oh, Nightmare, so there's a mod for Raft. I speedrun Raft. That's kind of like the main thing I'm known for. Because I hold the world record in 3 categories. There's a mod that makes Raft incredibly difficult. And it's called the Nightmare mod, so hence Nightmare Raft. So I'm going to try, when we reach that follower goal, I'm going to go for speedrunning the Nightmare difficulty mod. And we'll see how that goes. I don't think it'll go well, because I primarily speedrun in easy. Yeah, so that's what that is. Anyways, stellar sea lions, we talked about earlier how you can tell the difference between a sea lion and a seal based on their ears. These guys also fall into the rock sausage category, and I don't think they're quite as cute as the harbor seals, so we'll put them in B tier. Other than that, they're just kind of vibe, They're just kind of here. And they eat a lot of fish, and they live around where I live, and I like that for them. This is the stonefish. This is another animal that you do not want to interact with. Kind of like the blue ring octopus or the cone snail. It's just like, absolutely do not interact with it. It will hurt you. It can kill you. You will be very dead if you step on it and you don't get treatment immediately. So, don't do that. Fun fact. These guys actually kind of scare me because as someone who's really interested in benthic ecology and coastal ecology, that's exactly where these guys live. And I live in, a little bit of constant terror of accidentally stepping on one of these guys because I high-key do not want to do that. And that's, one of my ocean fears right there, is the stonefish. The sunfish, or the molefish, D tier. Mostly because, frankly, I have no clue how this thing is still alive. It has, 3 functioning brain cells, and I'm not even kidding. You can literally find pictures of them with chunks bitten out of them, and they're still swimming along like nothing happened, because they have 0 brain. They can also flip themselves over sideways on the surface, and they're so dumb that they can't right themselves. It's how are you still here? It's kind of like the chambered nautilus, but without any of the features that make a chambered nautilus redeemable. What? I don't get it. I don't get how the sunfish is still alive, but it is, so I guess we'll rank it, and it's going in the D tier because it makes no sense to me. We got a swordfish. Frankly, I think these guys are cool, mostly because of the massive sword, but specifically because of the babies. If you look at pictures of baby swordfish, it's this much sword and this much fish. It's we have all of the essentials, and the essentials is sword, and that's it. And I, perfect, ideal, I love it, it's great. It's great. So that makes me happy. Next up is the trilobite, or trilobite, depending on who you ask. These guys are prehistoric. They no longer exist in our oceans, and they're kind of similar to isopods. Basically, I'm just going to smack these in the middle because we know a lot about them through their fossils, because again, they don't exist in the current oceans, but also because they just kind of vibe on the bottom. Kind of like crabs. They're like ancient crabs. That's how I choose to think of them. Then we've got giant tube worms. These guys live around marine vents. Oop, did not mean to smack that there. Like super, super deep water volcanic trenches. These guys are also probably one of the first organisms to fully evolve down there. And they eat this like hyper hot, like nutrient stew, basically, that comes out of these volcanic vents. And that's metal. So we'll put them in B tier. Okay. And then we've got two left. We've got the yellowfin tuna. Frankly, this one is in here mostly because it can go ridiculously fast. Like, if you've never seen a tuna swim before, they can actually reach insane speeds. I think of like over 60 miles an hour. Which, holy crap, that's fast. So there's actually some really interesting behaviors in, I want to say South America, I can't remember exactly where certain yellowfin tuna will swim close to shores, and then a species of sea lion will actually kind of herd them into like closed canals and everything so that they can eat them. And usually just like one or two tuna is enough for the whole group. So it's this really interesting like corralling behavior that they're using to harvest these tuna. But the tuna themselves put up a good fight because, again, they are so incredibly fast, which is just what? You know, it's like one of those things where it's like, how did that happen? Because nature is whack. And we're on to our last animal. This is a wrasse. Specifically, I put wrasse in here mostly because they're like, again, if you ever go on some like coral reef trip or you want to go see like some common marine animals or an aquarium, chances are you're going to find some kind of wrasse. These guys, like one of the more common ones that we know about is the cleaning wrasse, which hosts little cleaning stations for things like turtles. They'll actually come and like eat all the parasites off of a turtle shell, which is really cute. Or a lot of them are just plain colorful and they're cool to look at. One of my favorite species happens to be yellow and purple. They're pretty easy to identify in the water and they're just really cute. So all in all, I think these guys are a solid B tier. We're gonna make our third line of the B tier just for this guy. But that's all 100 of our marine animals. So the S tier is unsurprisingly a lot of sea stars, considering those are my people. You know, we've got some of the most quintessential marine animals on here: bottlenose dolphins, great white sharks, otters, like manatees, and just some other ones I find cool, like the glass sponge and the Dumbo octopus. And the Garibaldi fish. A tier is just the things that are generally pretty cool, but not quite as edgy as the things in S tier, or that aren't as near and dear to my heart like these species of sea stars. Things like the barracuda, where people are afraid of them, but in reality they're just really chill. Or the ctenophores that everyone seems to misspell. B tier is just kind of our middle ground, where it's like, yeah, this exists, and I like that for them, you know? And C tier is like, I'm not a huge fan of you for one reason or another. D tier is usually invasive or has literally nothing going on inside of them. Or the barnacles, which will literally cut your hands again. They hurt, would not recommend. And the F tier because we had to include the longfin tilapia because it is not a marine fish. So, that's in there just for some old reference. But yeah, that is our full marine animals tier list. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for celebrating Earth Day with me. But I think this is probably where we're going to call it because I'm starting to lose my voice. Thank you, Janice, again for all of those gift subs. That was huge. Thank you, Standing Bear, for subscribing. And thank you, Osa. I still can't pronounce your name, and I'm so sorry. Osak Story. Again, if you have a way you want me to pronounce it, just let me know. Thank you for following. But that's it for me today. I will see you all again sometime soon. I don't watch live streams, but this was fun. Well, thank you for stopping by, Janos. And again, thank you for all of the gift subs. That was massive. Yeah, so I think that's it for today. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all again soon. But until then, have a great day.